Good morning, Conservatory. It's a great opportunity and privilege to spend some time with you this morning. I would like to share with you some thoughts from a friend of mine and hopefully maybe inspire you as you walk with God today. Now, this person is no longer on this earth. And I call him my friend simply because I spent a lot of time reading this person's works. So technically not my friend, but he has richly blessed me, and I hope maybe that his words today will be a blessing to you also. The guy that I'm talking about is A.W. Tozer. He wrote a book called The Knowledge of the Holy, and there are 17 words in chapter 1 that many years ago just kind of blew me over, and I have not gotten over it since then. I return to these words often. They continue to challenge me. So I want to share these words with you today. I want to share a portion of the chapter with you, and then just ask you a couple of questions, and hopefully it'll start maybe some thoughts for you as you go through your day today. Again, the author is A.W. Tozer. He was a Christian and Missionary Alliance pastor. He wrote several books that you may be well aware of, but this one is called The Knowledge of the Holy. And the chapter that I want to share with you is called Why We Must Think Rightly About God. So kind of the focus today is how we think about God and the importance of that. So here are the 17 words that he wrote that hugely impacted me. He said this: "What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us." Now, you can agree or disagree with that, but I would at least want to encourage you to think about it. I'll read it to you again. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. And so what I'd like to do now is to share a little bit more of his words from that chapter. So just sit back, relax, listen, hopefully enjoy. I'm sorry that this is not Morgan Freeman or Sean Connery reading to you. Today you'll get a little bit more Waterboy than either of those two guys. But please listen, and hopefully God will speak to you today. And then after I've read a few of these words, then I've got a couple questions for you and a passage to share with you today. So here it goes. The history of mankind will probably show that no people has ever risen above its religion. And man's spiritual history will positively demonstrate that no religion has ever been greater than its idea of God. Worship is pure or base as the worshiper entertains high or low thoughts of God. For this reason, the gravest question before the church is always God himself. And the most pretentious fact about any man is not what he at a given time may say or do, but what he in his deep heart conceives God to be like. We tend by a secret law of the soul to move toward our mental image of God. This is true not only of the individual Christian, but of the company of Christian that composes the church. Always the most revealing thing about the church is her idea of God, just as her most significant message is what she says about him or leaves unsaid. For her silence is often more eloquent than her speech. She can never escape the self-disclosure of her witness concerning God. Were we able to extract from any man a complete answer to the question, what comes into your mind when you think about God, we might predict with certainty the spiritual future of the man. Were we able to know exactly what our most influential religious leaders think of God today, we might be able with some precision to foretell where the church will stand tomorrow. Without doubt, the mightiest thought the mind can entertain is the thought of God. And the weightiest word in any language is its word for God. Thought and speech are God's gifts to creatures made in his image. These are intimately associated with him and impossible apart from him. It is highly significant that the first word was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We may speak because God spoke. In him, word and idea are indivisible. A right conception of God is basic not only to systematic theology, but to practical Christian living as well. It is to worship what the foundation is to the temple. Where it is inadequate or out of plumb, the whole structure must sooner or later collapse. I believe there is scarcely an error in doctrine or a failure in applying Christian ethics that cannot be traced finally to imperfect and ignoble thoughts about God. So my question for you today is really A.W. Tozer's question, which he posed just a few paragraphs earlier. What comes to mind when you think about God? And then my second question is, what are your thoughts guided by? So what do you think when you think about God? And how are those thoughts guided? Are your thoughts guided by God's word? And is that understanding of who God is kind of formed in community? And each of us have our own spiritual journeys. And each of us have our own perceptions of who God is. But I want to encourage you with one note. Sometimes it's often hard to grasp who God is. Many religions around the world will try their best to characterize whom they worship. But when it comes to Yahweh, the descriptions are many in the Bible, but it's sometimes really hard to come up with a mental picture of who he is. And see, that's where the beauty of Jesus comes in. The writer of Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3 says, "And he is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature." He is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature. So when sometimes my mind spins out of control thinking about really who God is, who God the Father is, I'm encouraged by this passage from the book of Hebrews, that if we really want to know who God is, we simply have to look at Jesus, who he was, what his nature was, how he acted. So I want to encourage you today that as you think about this most important question, who God is, it's important for your individual walk with God. It's also important for the community of believers in which you find yourself in. But I just want to encourage you today to go to Jesus and think about him. I want to leave you with the last paragraph of chapter 1, where he says this, and this is my challenge to you. The heaviest obligation lying upon the Christian church today is to purify and elevate her concept of God until it is more worthy of him and of her. In all her prayers and labors, this should have first place. We do the greatest service to the next generation of Christians by passing on to them undimmed and undiminished that noble concept of God, which we received from our Hebrew and Christian fathers of generations past. This will prove of greater value to them than anything that art or science can devise. And that is the beauty of working here at Valley Christian Schools, is we get the honor of passing along to our students that noble concept of who God is. So today, as you go in your classes, you go in your office, go wherever you go today, I want to encourage you to pass along that noble concept of who God is. And the faith that we have is Jesus Christ himself. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for this opportunity to hang out with you a little bit more, and God bless.